Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of my watch along with me, and we're watching Alien, and we are exactly 57 minutes into the movie. This is the theatrical version. Those of you that have watched my first half of this, thank you so much. I hope you really enjoyed it, and let's carry on and watch the final hour that's left of this movie, and I hope you stick with me till the end. Okay, so I'm going to start it now. And off we go. So the crew is still reeling from Kane's death. So we get a shot here, very reminiscent of the opening of the movie with the slow creep around the empty corridors. And we get what is effectively Kane's funeral, where they eject his wrapped body into space. Again, the documentary that I saw, the driver that owns that little prop, lucky him. I would love to own it. The effect of the Kane's corpse being blasted out into space was achieved by one of the effects technicians using a catapult. He actually had the shroud that's carved out of wood in a catapult, and he just pulled it back and went and just literally fired it in front of the camera. And they cut away before it started to drop in its trajectory, and that's how they achieved that effect. As simple as that. No computer graphics required. So there we have another lovely, lovely slow pan across the Nostromo. We can see all of the detail involved in the model work. Just beautiful. And we get to the little meeting of how they're going to try and catch this little bastard that's come out of Kane. On one of the Alien Blu-rays, there's a really good documentary where they talk to a chap called Bob Burns, who is an American that collects movie memorabilia. And he kind of collects it for archive purposes. And in that, he shows some of the props that he has from this movie. And one of the props that he shows is this motion tracker that Ash is showing the crew here. He's got the actual one that was used in the movie. And incredibly, I think this documentary was filmed in 2000, so that would have been 21 years after this movie was made. And incredibly, when he shows this tracker in this documentary, he switches it on and it still worked. The original 1979 battery that was in the device still bloody works. And sure enough, when he waved his hand in front of it, it did emit a sound, as if it actually performed the function it was supposed to do. It was a different sound to the one we hear in the movie, but it did work. So it would have given the actors something to work with. So there they go, splitting off into two teams to look for the little creature. But unbeknownst to them and unbeknownst to us as an audience at this point, the creature is already growing very, very quickly. So they're going to need a lot more than that little net to capture it should they come across it. Again, I know I keep repeating myself, but the sets were just amazing. Just these corridors. And one of the instructions that Ridley Scott gave the technicians was that he wanted it to be a practical set. So every button or switch that you see performs a function. It's not just there for dressing. If they press a button, something should happen. A flap should open up, a light should come on, there should be a sound. And there are various points in the movie where they interact with the set, and you'll see that happening. And apparently, I mentioned this in the little 10-minute test video that I did, but I think it was 2 Vulcan bombers or something that the production crew purchased as scrap. And they could effectively dismantle these bombers for parts and just strip it of all its parts. And they use these parts to dress the set, to add the little bits of fairing onto the set. And just such an amazing way of building a movie set. But it really gives an impression that this is a real spaceship. I think it was Ron Cobb that said that the good production design should be that you don't really think about it. You just completely accept that they're on a real spaceship, and you don't think, "Ooh, what a nice movie set." I mean, I do as a fan, because I've seen this movie so many times now and read so much about how they made it, that I just appreciate it in terms of the work that went into it. So there we can see that's some of the spacesuits there in storage. Really, really moody lighting. There is a director of cinematography on this movie called Derek Van Lint, who, when you look up his history on IMDb, didn't really do much other stuff of note. And I often wonder if he was kind of there just in a capacity to help Ridley Scott. I think Ridley Scott is the cinematographer of this movie, because he was operating the camera. It was Ridley Scott that wanted to control what he saw through that camera. So this is very much his vision. And of course, we've only got to look at Blade Runner to see that that kind of look follows on with that movie as well. So all this is just Ridley Scott's magical eye in terms of the design of the lighting and everything. So they just thought they were finding the creature, and it ended up being Jonesy the cat, bless him. And Parker's rightly saying, well, look, you've got to go and get the cat, otherwise we might pick it up on the tracker again. So Brett is now going to go off on his own to get the cat. And in one of the documentaries, one of the people that worked on the movie talked about when they saw it with a crowd on opening night with a paying audience. And he said that it got to this point in the movie where Brett goes, "Here, kitty, kitty." And apparently a patron just went, "Holy shit," and just got up and walked out of the cinema, because they knew at that moment that this character was going to die, that they would be the first person to be killed by this alien. And they couldn't cope with it. You know, the tension of that moment was so great. Interestingly, if you look in this room where he is now, you'll see that it's very gold. It has a kind of Aztec look. And as I said earlier, with the corridor leading up to the hypersleep chamber, that was also gold like this. But Ridley decided to paint it white to give it a different look, because it was a different part of the ship. Harry Dean Stanton, apparently on opening night, thanked Ridley Scott for the big close-ups that he got in this movie. He was really pleased with all the close-ups that he got. So he's still trying to find Kitty. Anyone that owns a cat will know what this is like when it's outside and you're trying to get it in the house. Interesting that room is in there. It has like vehicles. It looks like it's got a tank thing with treads. And he comes across the shedded skin of the alien. So at this point we think, oh, so it's like a snake. It shedded its skin, but we don't realize that it's going to get as big as it has. So I love the slowness of this scene and the slow tracking of the camera as it goes into the room, where this is the room where the landing struts are. So what we're going to see in this room are the landing feet of the Nostromo that we saw early in the movie, but they're kind of folded up and retracted into the ship. So what we're looking at there is one of the actual landing struts of the Nostromo, which I didn't realize for the longest time. And a lot of people have said, where does all this water come from when you're on a spaceship? And Ridley kind of described it as it's just condensation. It's just the humidity. If you watch the director's cut version of this, there's an extra scene added where we can see the alien creature swinging up in the chains high above him. And that's kind of the first reveal of the alien in the director's cut. But in the theatrical cut, we don't see him yet. And that's why I prefer the theatrical cut, to be honest. I think it kind of spoiled the moment having Alien there to then have him rise up behind Brett a little bit later. This bit always makes me think of my mum when I watched this with my mum once, and she said that she remembered when she was a little girl, she used to love doing this when it was raining and just hold her face up into the rain. So I always think of my mum with that moment. So just as he's about to give up, he hears Jonesy give a little meow, and he sets off on his search again. Such amazing lighting, isn't it? This could have quite easily looked terrible, and they'd have used too much lighting. So apparently what they did here is they had an Alsatian dog that they covered with a big piece of card, and they lifted the card away to reveal the dog, and that made the cat when he saw the dog. And here we see the beautiful alien creature for the first time. Carlo Rambaldi mechanical mouth and H.R. Geiger built suit. So the first time we'd have seen this in the cinema, it would have been hard to comprehend what you're looking at. I love that shot of Jonesy just looking up thinking, what the hell? But apparently the chap wearing the alien suit, because this is pre-CGI, to make an alien, it has to be a man in a suit. One of the production crew was in a pub in Soho, and he saw a very tall, thin black guy standing at the bar. And apparently he went up to him and said, hey, do you want to be in movies? And this chap apparently gave him the obvious response of sod off or whatever it was. But he says, no, I'm deadly serious. And because he had such a unique frame to him, he was very tall and very slender. And this chap was called Balaji Badejo, and he was a Nigerian. And he agreed that he would dress up as this alien and wear this suit. And because he was like 7 foot tall, it just gave the alien a unique posture and a size and things like that. And Balaji Badejo, he died at the age of 39. He had sickle cell disease, I believe it was. But there are quite a few pictures of him online if you want to Google him, of him wearing the suit and just sitting around in between takes wearing the alien suit. And there's a few photographs of him wearing the suit without the head. Yeah, but again, an inspired bit of casting to get someone of that size, because it really adds to the sort of threat of the alien with the sheer scale of it. So now they know that they're dealing with a fully grown figure, because in the director's cut, there's an extra scene where after Brett is killed, we see Ripley and Parker run in to the room and look up, and all blood is dripping down where Brett was killed. And Parker explains that he obviously saw it and it's as big as a man. So unfortunately, the next crew member to get it is going to be Captain Dallas, which I'm always very sad about every time I watch this. But he's come up with an idea of they realize it's using the air vents to traverse around Nostromo. So if one crew member goes into the air vents with a flamethrower, maybe they can drive it into an airlock and then inject it into space. And Captain Dallas has volunteered to do this, and he's asking Mother if it's a viable thing to do. And he's basically saying, what are my chances? Am I going to survive this? And of course, the computer just says, does not compute. It's not giving it enough information for it to come up with a valid response. So I think he was doing that, hopefully, hoping that there would be a bit of comfort with the computer saying, yes, this may be successful, but it wasn't to be. This sequence, out of all the sequences in the movie, is the one that genuinely still gives me the creeps. If I'm watching this in a very dark room at night on my own with the headphones on, so I'm fully immersed in this movie, this is the bit that always gives me the creeps. Just had a horrible feeling then that I didn't start the recording at the beginning of this video. So there's Lambert watching him on the motion tracker. Yeah, can you imagine if this was a real life event that we're seeing? There is no way in hell that I would be going into that air vent. No way at all. Maybe if I was with somebody else and you could kind of shuffle along back to back and cover both sides at the same time, but oh my God, just the thought of it is terrifying. And I guess I'm slightly claustrophobic anyway. Really creepy sound effect of the opening of the vent, the iris opening up. It's like really, really great sound effects in this movie. Yeah, I suppose it's a pretty decent idea, but no, I just wouldn't want to do it. I'm sorry. So we can see that Ripley is genuinely looking concerned, which adds fuel to the fact that, are they lovers? Does it really matter if they are or not? She's obviously just concerned for him as a fellow crew member, having already lost 2 crew members at this point. There we are. So Lambert's just picked up the alien signal. This always makes me think of one of the computer games based around the Alien universe, the very first computer game based on Alien, which was for the ZX Spectrum. And I think I might do a video about that at some point in the future. But this sequence always makes me think of that video game for reasons that I'll go into when I make that video. So now he's kind of at a junction and he has to determine which way he's going to go. And he makes the decision to go down. That's a great shot there, looking up at him crawling down. So this is where things start to go slightly awry, and Lambert's going to tell him that she's lost the signal. So this is where the hairs in my neck begin to creep a little bit. And here Dallas is going to put his hand into what looks like KY jelly. Well, it is KY jelly, but it's obviously the alien slime, the alien saliva. Ugh. The documentary that I was telling you with the driver, he tells a story about how he was tasked to go to a pharmacy to pick up a package. And he got there and said, you know, I'm from Shepperton Studios. I've come to collect a package. And the people behind the counter were all sniggering. And he didn't know why. And they handed him this big box. And when he took it back to the studio, he opened it up and it was like dozens and dozens of packs of KY lubrication jelly, which they would use to smear all over the alien suit to make it look slimy. So he was sort of said, God knows what he thought I would be doing with it in the pharmacy. So here's Dallas about to meet his end, bless him. And a great jump scare. My favourite jump scare in the whole movie is he looks one way, looks the other, whoa, and there's the alien with the old jazz hands. But holy crap, it took a number of views of watching this movie before that jump scare before I finally became accustomed to it. That must have been a terrific moment in a cinema. Back in 1979, when he looks the other way and it's like, whoa! And like right there, holy shit. And of course, we don't know this because we don't get the sequence in the theatrical version, but in the director's cut, there is obviously the extended scene where Ripley finds Dallas and Brett cocooned in the alien nest, as it were. And we are given the impression that they're being metamorphosized into an alien egg, as if that's the alien life cycle. The alien will capture a human, and it can inject them with something that will make them morph into an alien egg, which is a horrific thought. Because in that scene, Dallas is still alive, and he's just able to communicate with Ripley, and he instructs her to burn him with the flamethrower that she's holding, which she does. But I still think it's better without that sequence, because it just adds to the air of mystery with the creature. And also it breaks up the flow of the ending. That was the reason Ridley took it out in the first place, but then he decided to put it back in for the director's cut when that came out. So I don't know why he decided to do that, but I still there are both versions on the 4K, but I always watch the theatrical cut. I haven't watched the director's cut version for many years. Yeah, so this is the last survivors just discussing what to do, and Ripley saying we should succeed with Dallas's plan, but Lambert is obviously very nervous, thinking they're all going to die. And we can see Ripley's beginning to distrust Ash and how he doesn't seem to be very helpful. And there's a bit of tension there between them, which will play out as we get on in the movie. Again, it's a great reveal when we learn that Ash is a robot. A little look there between Ripley and Lambert. It's interesting when you watch this movie for the first time, if you knowing little about it, and you really do start to wonder who is going to survive this. And I think it's at this point that perhaps you do start to think that it will be Ripley. She's the only one that's kind of keeping it together to some degree and keeping a level head with what's going on around them. And maybe because she's the prettiest, you want her to be the survivor. But she's just fantastic. And this was her first big film role. I think she did she had a small part in a Woody Allen movie. It was either Annie Hall or Manhattan. It was one or the other, where she has a very small walk-on part. But this was her first big movie. And there's a lovely story that Gordon Carroll, one of the producers, tells in the documentary, where they were interviewing actors during the casting phase. And they were looking at all these different actresses to play the role of Ripley. And he said he remembers the day that Sigourney Weaver arrived, and he said that she was late for the interview. And he said, and they were just about to give up on her, and suddenly they heard footsteps coming down the corridor. And he says there was a knock on the door, and he said we opened the door, and Ripley was standing there. And that's how he described it, as if they knew the second that they put eyes on her that she was the one. And Sigourney Weaver is quite tall, but she said that for the interview she was wearing very high heel sort of kicker boots to give her even more height. So maybe it was that impressed them. But terrific casting. I can't imagine anyone else playing this. I can't imagine any other actor in any of these roles, because they all encompass their own roles so well. So here we get to the beginning of the reveal of Ash's true nature, as he is. We can already see that he's not quite acting himself. It's as if part of him is short-circuiting or something. Or maybe it's because his programming is to protect the alien, and because the other crew members are now plotting to try and destroy this creature, his Weyland-Yutani programming is telling him to protect the creature at all costs, even at the cost of killing the other crew members. That's probably what it is, actually. And there we can see what is sweat, but he's sweating this milky substance, which is odd. The first time you watch it, you think, what is that? But we'll soon quickly realize that he's not what we think he is. So he's able to toss her around like she's a rag doll. I hope you're enjoying watching this with me, by the way. Those few of you that have got this far, if you actually have watched this far and you're already on this video, so you've watched the first part in its entirety, and you're now this far into part 2, I really thank you. It shows that you must enjoy this type of content, because I've got a feeling this video is going to get hardly any views. So if you have got this far, then thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And if you want me to do others of this type for different movies, then please comment and maybe suggest a movie. And if it's a movie I know really well that I enjoy watching, I'd be more than happy to do another one of these at some point. So here, he's trying to kill her by shoving a magazine down her throat to effectively suffocate her. And Ridley Scott said that he wanted Ash to do this because he felt that it was Ash's way of trying to fulfill a sexual urge, because as a robot, it couldn't understand the act of sex. And so it feels that if it can insert this magazine into the Ripley's mouth, he's effectively having intercourse with her. That was the way he described it. Bit too weird for my liking. I think he's just trying to suffocate her. And here we go. Whack. There goes his head. Apparently this was the scene that caused quite a few people to pass out or leave the cinema in shock. Not the chestburster sequence, but the scene where Ash's head gets knocked off. Because it is shocking. It's a big reveal. There are two moments to all of this with Ash's smashed up robot body that I really hate. It's the only thing about the movie that I've never really liked. The first bit is here, where Parker's wrestling, and we can see Ash's hands are like that. There's suddenly just synthetic hands that are all straight. Now, you could argue that because he's been damaged, maybe he's kind of short-circuiting, so his mechanics in his hands have locked up, so his hands are like that. But the other moment I really hate is this bit here. Now, I have done a video just about this moment, and it was one of the most successful videos I did on my channel. And it's to do with a cut where we cut from a false head to Ian Holmes' head. And I explained in this other video why I hate this cut. And I attempted to try and re-edit it to make it better. And I got a lot of positive comments from people saying they agree with what I did. This bit here, how it just suddenly jarringly cuts from a false head to Ian Holmes' real head. And I often thought, why don't they just cut away to another shot for a few seconds and then cut back? So I tried to do it in this other video. So if you haven't seen that, please, after you've watched this, go back and check that out. It's the most successful video I ever did. I think it's up to like 40,000 views or something. Completely took me by surprise. I was overwhelmed by the response to it. Unfortunately, I've never been able to replicate that success with any other video. But yeah, it's just that one moment in it. But one moment of a few seconds in a 2-hour movie isn't bad, really. So here is where Ash is basically telling them that there's bugger all they can do and that it's a perfect organism. And you can see Parker's getting really fed up with him. I love Ash's voice in this scene, how it's like grizzled. He's been damaged in all of his voice circuitries. Little edit there. Hopefully you won't notice it, but would you believe somebody rang the doorbell? So I had to quickly go and get that. This is what happens when you try and do sort of long recordings. I've forgotten my train of thought now. So Ian Holm apparently was very sick during the making of this scene because they kept having to pour milk into his mouth so he could while he was talking. And the milk got a bit stale after a while. So it made him feel a bit uneasy and unwell. Apparently, the false head that looks so awful in this, the problem with it was it dried out. They did a casting of Ian Holmes' face at this point where he's smiling. And as you can see there, it doesn't look like him. And Ridley Scott asked why. And he said, well, it's dried out. So the actual synthetics that they used dried out and it shrunk. His actual head shrunk. Obviously, if they did that now with the modern makeups that they have, the synthetics, it would look a lot more lifelike. This bit is always a bit strange, how Parker burns the head, and we'll see that it burns off the flesh. But underneath it is just like a white face with no eyes or anything. It just looks like it's made out of wax. But again, I'm prepared to let that go. So now we're down to the last 3 crew members, and they've come up with the decision that they're just going to take their chances on the shuttle, the Narcissus. But before they can do that, they need to get coolant canisters for the long journey home so they can go into hypersleep. So they have to split up. And while Parker and Lambert get coolant canisters, Ripley is going to try and find the cat. Because we don't want to leave Kitty Cat behind. I'd like to think I wouldn't. If it was me up there with my cat Luna, I wouldn't want to leave her behind. I'd be bringing her back. So there is our first look of the Narcissus shuttle. Really, again, fantastic visual effect shot there, model shot. And there's a shot where we're looking in through the cockpit window from the outside, and we can see Ripley moving around inside the cockpit. That is not Sigourney Weaver. That is her stand-in for that particular shot. But because it's in such a small screen that is not Sigourney Weaver. That's her stand-in. And that was achieved by just having the front of the model placed in front of a television set that was playing that scene. So it's just kind of a false front in front of the TV. That's how they did it. So here's Parker and Lambert getting the coolant canisters. And Lambert at this point is on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She's so nervous, bless her, as I would be. And she's doing her best to hold it together as they get these coolant canisters. And the slightest noise makes her jump and just feel uneasy. Again, she is our representation of fear, and she plays it really, really well. I always think the moment that Ripley ties her hair back, we know she's going to survive this. It just makes her look more that she's now in action mode and she's prepared to handle whatever will be thrown at her at this point in the movie. Whereas these two are kind of on edge and are struggling to hold it together. Ripley is kind of being a bit more level-headed under pressure. And to me, that's the first hint that she's going to survive this. I can actually remember the first clip of this movie I ever saw before we got it on Betamax back in 1981. And there was a TV program that was on, I believe it was ITV or Yorkshire Television in the region that I live. And I've tried doing some research to find this program, but I can't remember what it was called. But it was a program where they would interview a celebrity and they would talk about some of their favorite movies. And this episode was an actor called Oliver Tobias, who is kind of semi-famous. You will either know that name or you won't. But he picked Alien as one of his choices. And they showed a clip from the ending of the movie where Ripley is in the shuttle getting into the spacesuit to confront the alien for the final time. And the clip was only about 20-25 seconds long. But that was the first proper moving clip that I ever saw of Alien was in that program. Up to that point, I'd only seen photographs in a magazine. And I've never forgotten that. I always remember that moment of seeing that clip and just thinking, oh gosh, I want to see this movie so bad. And it wasn't long after that we finally got it on Betamax. So there's Jonesy giving Ripley a little scare, as cats sometimes do. But thankfully, Jonesy is safe. In one of the documentaries, somebody else mentioned that when they saw this on opening night, they heard one of the audience members shout, "Leave the fucking cat!" As if to say, that's not a priority in this situation. You should just be worrying about your own arse. And here we get another look of the alien creature. So this will be Balaji Badejo in the suit, covered in KY jelly. So now we get a slightly better look at the banana head and the stovepipes. Looking incredible. So now we get to work out the physiology of it a bit more if we were watching this for the first time. I love here how the alien swings around and thwacks Parker with its tail in a really good sort of whiplash sound. So Parker is about to be killed in the same way as Brett was killed, with the skull punch. And there's a lot of controversy as to what he says here before he's killed. But to me, he's saying, "Get out of the road," as if, which is another way of saying, "Get out of the way." He's telling Lambert to just get out of the room. Get out of the road. That shot there of the tail going up between Lambert's legs is actually Brett's legs. That's from earlier in the movie. That's Brett. That's not Lambert. But they used that shot to infer that the alien was doing something to Lambert. I don't know what. Probably best not knowing. And there's Lambert's final scream. So at this point, Ripley, bless her, other than the cat, is now on her own. So we're all rooting for her. Can she hold it together? I wonder. And here we get the just enough of a shot to see that Lambert and Parker are both deceased. There's a game called Alien Isolation that was released about 10 years ago. Fantastic game. If you're a fan of Alien, you must play Alien Isolation. It's a scary, scary game. But there was some DLC for that game where you could play on the Nostromo, where they replicated the Nostromo in the video game to a really accurate degree. So you can effectively walk around the Nostromo. And they even got the surviving actors back to do voice work. It's a wonderful, wonderful little bit of video game history. And it's very interesting walking around a virtual representation of the Nostromo and seeing how the rooms join together, which is another reason why, as I said, if I was a billionaire, I'd want to build a replica of these sets. So here we go. So now Ripley is going all out and she's going to start the self-destruct sequence and blow up the Nostromo. One of these sort of gold canister things that have the little red button inside them, the things that are lifting up. Ridley Scott says he's got one of those in his production office. He's still got one of those saved as a memento from the movie. So she's now got 10 minutes, and I think she's got 5 minutes to actually switch the self-destruct off, and then 5 minutes for the ship to blow up after that. So she's got 5 minutes to change her mind, basically. So all should be hunky-dory, but what's going to happen is she's going to head back towards the shuttle, only to find that the bloody alien is standing in the corridor that leads to where the shuttle is. So it's kind of blocking a passage. And there's Jonesy in his cat box. Again, in the director's version, there is an extra little nugget coming up where when she sees the alien and so she has to run back to disarm the self-destruct sequence, she leaves the cat box behind. And there's an extra shot where the alien is looking at the cat in the cat box. And then it kind of knocks the cat box to one side out of annoyance or whatever it is. But that's another little bit that he put in the director's cut. So little things like that you think, well, why? Why did we need that extra shot? And that's why the director's cut is shorter, because he added things in, but he also trimmed a lot of shots. And I always think it's the length of the shots and the timing of the shots that add to the tension. That's why I always prefer the theatrical version. The strobe light effect there that happens at that moment is slightly whoa on the eyes, but it's a good visual cue as a reminder of where she's standing at that point. Because when she goes back to try and disable the self-destruct and realizes that she can't, she's run out of time. When she runs back to the shuttle and gets to the point where the strobe light is, we realize that she's right back at that point. So it's kind of a visual reminder that she's gone back to the point that she was before, which is a nice little touch. So now she's doing her damnedest to try and turn off the self-destruct sequence. If you watch this in 4K, the actual lid of the self-destruct sequence has the instructions written on it. And in the scene earlier, when she first opens it up and she's reading the instructions, you can clearly see that they needed some of the writing to be in red. So they just got a red felt tip pen and coloured it in. And you can see the pen strokes if you look closely in 4K. I never noticed it in other versions of this movie. But in the 4K version, because it's so crisply detailed, you can see where they coloured it in with a felt tip pen. I'm trying to remember if it's already happened at this point, but there's one scene where she's running down the corridor. I think we're coming up to it now. And in the background, we'll see a crew member quickly cover themselves with a bit of the set, as if a crew member's got in the way and they have to quickly hide themselves behind the set. There, it just happened then. I don't know whether you saw that, but you could see somebody hiding. So now she's got minutes to get onto the Narcissus and to detach from the Nostromo and get to a minimum safe distance before it all blows up. So again, she's now back at the point with the strobe light, so we can see that she's back to where the alien was there previously. Well, thankfully, he's moved on. But what she doesn't realise is the aliens thought, oh, I think I'll get on the shuttle as well. It looks quite nice in there. And this movie is like often credited as the movie that introduced the female hero. That why not have the survivor and the one that kills the alien to be a female character? Why not? It's a terrific move, and I'm really glad that they did do it this way around, because we would never have had Sigourney Weaver playing the character of Ripley and be as famous as she was in this role. And I just love her in it. I think she's fantastic. Yeah, so here we are with the strobe light. So she's looking down the corridor towards the shuttle, and the alien's not there. So she's thinking, oh, thank God for that. And then she sees Jonesy in his little cat box. So you see the cat box has been knocked over onto its side, because in the extra scene that was in the director's cut, the alien knocks it out of the way. I always like this shot when it switches to the reverse angle where she's running into the shuttle, and we can see the explosions starting to happen behind her. And they're real fire. It's real fire that's coming up behind her. So there's no wonder she looks scared in that moment when she's trying to get the hell out of the way here. So you can see the fire coming down the corridor, and she's going, oh my God. I mean, look at that. That's fantastic. That is not matted on. That is an actual physical effect. I also like how the cockpit of the Narcissus is like a scaled down version of the cockpit of the Nostromo. Very, very similar design in terms of the console and the seating. So again, that is not Sigourney Weaver in that external shot. That is the stand-in actress. So thankfully, she doesn't need to read the manual. That screen there that says Purge, that is exactly the same effect used in Blade Runner when they're in the spinners. I mentioned the other one in part one. But yeah, they use that exact graphic with the word Purge flashing in the beginning of Blade Runner. If ever I do a watch with me on Blade Runner, I'll point that out, don't worry. So here she goes, getting as far away as she can. I quite like how this explosion is in sort of 3 stages. It's not just one bang, it like happens 3 times. That being number 1. Again, such a simple effect of shaking the camera, but it really gives the impression that she's being buffeted around. There's explosion number 2. And there's the final explosion. So just think, at this point, when you're watching this in the cinema in 1979, would you really be sat as an audience member thinking, wow, that was incredible, and she survived? And how many audience members would be thinking, but it's not over. I bet the alien is still on board. Because now it's such an obvious plot device that there would be an extra thing to happen at the end of the movie. Well, that wasn't so obvious back in the 70s. I call it the old fatal attraction thing, where you think the baddie's dead, and then at the last second, they come to life again. But when this movie came out, that wasn't such an obvious trope. So I wonder if it was a genuine shock to people when it's revealed that the alien is now on the shuttle with it. You could argue that if this was the end of the movie, then the movie should just be ending at this point and the credits should come up. Why do we need to see all of this of her preparing for hypersleep if the movie is officially over? But it's still a great reveal. And I love that because of the design of the alien with its head, it's kind of hiding in a little alcove amongst all the ventilation. And its head almost looks like a pipe, which was another thing that was used in Alien 3. There's a sequence in Alien 3 where Ripley goes looking for the creature. And she thinks she sees the creature in the darkness, and she hits it with a pole. And it turns out to be just one of the pipes that's built into the wall. So it was a very, very similar idea that they reused in Alien 3. And it was also Sigourney Weaver's idea to strip off, to get down to her underwear for this sequence, because she felt it would be more menacing if she faced the alien almost completely naked. Apparently, she did want to go fully naked. She was quite happy to take a vest and her knickers off. But obviously they thought, well, we'll never get that through the censors. So they got the bare minimum. But it's a very good way of having her completely, not only almost physically naked, but metaphorically, she's naked in terms of being able to protect herself in just a skimpy undies. Which, let's face it, is not a bad thing to see. Yeah, so at this point, the alien is actually behind her. You can see it. You can see its head and its arm in an up position, just to the left of her there. So it's really clever that it's already hiding in plain sight. And here we get the jump. I've often wondered what the dimple is in the top of the alien's head. It looks like a little blowhole, like a whale would have. So there's the alien going, peekaboo! And again, Sigourney Weaver's acting here, her erratic breathing, she genuinely looks completely terrified. And one of my most favourite shots in the movie is the shot where she's looking through the door at the alien, and we see the kind of dust on the glass of the door. And with the lighting and everything, it just looks beautiful. And it's always appealed to me, that shot. I don't know why. But I'll point it out because it's coming up in a second. All the slithery KY jelly going everywhere. This shot here, I think that's just a fantastic shot. It looks beautiful. I think if that was me after I killed the alien, I'd want to clean up all the slime before I got into the hypersleep chamber. I wouldn't have liked the idea of sleeping with all that slime being everywhere. I often wonder if this shot, they had to do it more than once, if she revealed pubic hair or something, if her underwear just happened to move into just the wrong place. There we can kind of see some of the metal structure of the extendable jaws as it came out of its mouth then, very briefly. I don't know whether that was intentional, but you can almost see like corrugated cross metal framework of the jaw as it came out. It still looks amazing though. Again, we got the ice hockey gloves there. Sorry if I'm going quiet. I'm so engrossed in watching this that sometimes I forget that I need to speak. So here we go. What we believe is the only weapon that is available to them is what looks like a little spear gun. In the director's cut version of this movie, there's a shot when Kane goes down into the where the eggs are in the derelict alien ship. There's a moment where we see that he's actually holding one of those guns and he kind of puts it to one side. So at that point, he is carrying some sort of a weapon, but they never use it. In fact, it's not that exact weapon, but it's a variation of it. And it looks like it fires a little spear. So just to add to the tension, she's strapping herself in, but she's got to now depressurize the room so she can open the airlock door and hopefully eject it out in space. But the act of doing that just wakes it from its slumber. So again, practical set buttons that do things when you press them and light up, and just bloody excellent. Just so well done. Is that kind of thing that they kind of miss out now on modern science fiction movies. They tend to go with the thing that I really hate because we've seen it so many times is when they're in a science fiction movie and it's in the future, all the controls are either virtual, so they're fiddling with things in thin air, or it's like reflected onto glass, so they're just touching pieces of glass. But I much prefer it in science fiction movies where they have real clicky-clacky keyboards and buttons that they can press. So there's Balaj, he's standing up to his full height in his suit. This is probably the best view we get of the the outline of the alien with the stovepipes on the back. And I also love this moment here as well, where she turns around and the alien stood right behind her with its mouth open. Bang, there he goes. Great idea how it's still trying to get back in, but she fires the gun at it, and then the gun gets jammed in the door, and it all adds to the tension of it. And the effect here of the engines being switched on is just a very, very bright light and then water droplets being dropped onto the camera. But it just gives the effect of like a plasma engine. It's such a brilliantly conceived visual idea that just works. You don't look at that and think, oh, it's water. You think, no, it's like a plasma engine. It's just absolutely fantastic. And it's those sort of ideas that they came up with, whether that was all Ridley Scott, I don't know, but it just adds to the beauty of this movie, and why I love it so much. And then we get the final scene with Ripley recording her message before she goes into hypersleep, which we hear briefly again during the closing moments of Alien 3. I always thought that was a bittersweet moment where we hear this exact transmission being played at the end of Alien 3 after she commits suicide and closing the prison facility down. Yeah, fantastic movie. I've definitely watched this easily over 100 times. I've tried to often calculate how many times I've seen this movie, but I just give up trying to quantify it. I know it's a lot. And now we get a fantastic, lovely, beautiful piece of music by the American composer Howard Hanson, I think his name is, which they use for the final credits. So it's not Jerry Goldsmith music at the end of the movie, but the music they've picked is so suited to it that if you sit and listen to this piece of music in isolation, it's just beautiful. And it's a lovely kind of full stop to the movie. So Terry Rawlings, he was the film editor on Blade Runner. And he was also the film editor on Ridley Scott's movie after that, Legend. But then for whatever reason, Ridley started using different editors. Les Dilley and Roger Christian, those two really deserve a lot of credit for the look of this movie in terms of the Nostromo and things like that. Carlo Rambaldi, he was famous for doing the E.T. creature. Brian Johnson and Nick Alder. Nick Alder is a very well-known practical effects man. And David Lowe, the technician I talked about earlier, in his website, one of his documentaries is interviewing Nick Alder when he worked on this movie and discussing that. And that's also a really great video. So you really must track his website down and have a look. So, there's Dennis Lowe. There he is. That's the guy that I emailed. His name's just gone up the screen. So there we are. We have just watched Alien. I hope that you really enjoyed that. I most certainly did. I hope that me rambling through it didn't bore you. If you got to this point, obviously it didn't. So I really appreciate you taking the time to watch both parts of this video in its entirety. If I could award you a special prize, I would. So please remember to give me a thumbs up. If you know people that would enjoy this, then please share my video out to them. I really don't mind. I'm trying to grow my channel and do different things. As I said, if you want me to talk about different movies, then please leave a comment and let me know, and I'll do my best to get that recorded at some point. It'd be nice to do a number of these a year. So yeah, thank you for watching. I've really enjoyed watching Alien again and talking about it. It's quite interesting doing that. I've never done that before. And I hope to see you very soon. Bye for now.